if you're a listener to this show, you know how high I hold my mom in regard for all she did to keep a roof over our head, to give us a sense of purpose and pursuit. And I also was blessed with 3 sisters, 2 daughters. I now have a granddaughter, and I have 2 female dogs in my life. So I'm surrounded by women. I feel blessed for that. And one of the things that I wanted to do this show today is there's a simple reality. The Canadian economy needs an injection of positivity and possibility. It needs opportunity, that sense of we can do anything. One of the places we can look for that is not in the ground, it's not in minds, but it's the women in our lives, because women entrepreneurs matter. They create jobs, build companies, open doors to others, bring in new products, services, ideas into the marketplace.
We certainly have a lot of values that are economic strengths. And so if we can support each other and have allies support us in growing, that'll be a good way to get serious about one of our most underused growth engines, which is women entrepreneurs.
In Canada, women entrepreneurs, women-owned businesses already generate more than 90 billion in annual revenues, employ over 1 million people. Yet women-owned firms still make up a minority of private sector businesses, and an even smaller share of suppliers to large corporations and governments. So what that means to me is the issue is not talent, it's whether we're creating the conditions for more women to start, scale, and succeed.
It's true that I'm not the person that's going out to the ball games and at the bar and playing golf. And so you miss out on business opportunities.
And it matters even more in a country like Canada. We have a relatively small domestic market. We're talking constantly about growth and productivity and innovation and competitiveness. But if we're truly serious about these things, we need to be serious about unleashing more women entrepreneurs. They're not a side conversation in the economy. They're part of our growth going forward.
You have a problem, look at the exceptional talent you've got here. I have lists of these women who are ready to go, certified. So I come in with the solution, not just the problem, and say, let's test this out, and then let's talk.
Researchers argue that increasing women-owned small businesses by just 10% could add nearly $200 billion to Canada's GDP going forward. And yet, so many women have to build through more friction than they should. They have less access to capital, less access to networks, less clarity on how to navigate the systems that help businesses scale. They're encouraged to start, but not fully supported to grow.
Women shouldn't have to outperform broken systems just to get a fair shot.
So this show today is about celebrating 3 accomplished women. It's also about asking a bigger question. If this country truly wants more growth, more resilience, more globally competitive businesses, what has to change is allowing more women to build them.
$2 to $3 billion internally to invest in building women up. Imagine the impact of that.
I think we have to continue to be really, really strong on women and diversity. That's what makes Canada so special.
Hi, it's Tony Chapman. Thank you for listening to Chatter That Matters, presented by RBC. If you can, please subscribe to the podcast. And ratings and reviews, well, they're always welcome and they're always appreciated.
So let me talk about who's joining us tonight. Jennifer Menard-Shand is the founder and CEO of Staff Shop in Fire Lanes. She's been on our show twice in the past. She is a keynote speaker. She's a force of change. She's about inclusion, performance, purpose. She talks about relationships with her second in command. She talks about what she's doing to advance First Nations people and why we need more representation and ownership. She's 3 times a nominee for RBC Canadian Women Entrepreneur Awards. Shamira Jaffer is a founder and CEO of Signify Solutions, a company helping shape the future of automated retail through robotics. I looked at her video and she talked about when she had a handful of people. Now she has 2 offices. She's marketing around the world. She's an innovation leader, someone who embraces diversity as a strength, not something you have to do, but something you should do. And she has tremendous courage about how to build and how to go forward. She was a recipient of the 2023 RBC Canadian Women Entrepreneur Innovation Awards. And finally, Dr. Georgette Zinaty is the president of WBE Canada, WBE Canada. I'm so surprised she went over there because she is a trailblazer, she's an entrepreneur, and I'm so proud that she took this on because this is true public calling. This is an organization dedicated to connecting women-owned businesses to procurement opportunities and helping them grow through access, advocacy, and visibility. She sits at the intersection of leadership, inclusion, and economic opportunity. I would tell you that her knuckles are raw because she's never afraid to bang on doors. She'll play a crucial perspective on what stands between talent and skill in this country. So I'm really excited to have all three of you on, and thank you for joining me on Chatter That Matters.
Thank you for having us.
I want to start with the broadest question. When you hear that phrase, Canada needs more women entrepreneurs, what does that mean to each of you personally in terms of what's holding us back? Because all three of you are successful women entrepreneurs. Let's start with you, Jennifer.
I think of a previous show that you had. I think you said something around like, we've got to keep our visionaries at home. I'm hearing, people wanting to leave Canada, unfortunately, really kind of supporting the women that are here in Canada is going to come down to like just providing real access and actual real opportunities, because we're doing a lot. We're building companies, we're creating jobs. A lot of us have families. I think sometimes there's like this invisible load that's rarely acknowledged enough. And we certainly have a lot of values that are economic strengths. And so if we can support each other and have allies support us in growing, that'll be a good way to get serious about one of our most underused growth engines, which is women entrepreneurs.
And Shamira, let's go to you. I mean, you're someone that dreamed it and you do it, and you're continuing to do it with lots of headwind. How have you found your way through? If you had to do it all again, what would you hope to see change in Canada to allow you to focus more on your dream and less on all the bureaucracy and red tape that comes with trying to make it happen?
For the longest time, honestly, I used to say, if I was in the US, I'd be a lot richer. Because I felt that where it was really hard, women-owned, is getting money. I have to say I'm very optimistic with women I meet today, the younger generation. They just have a lot more confidence. Some stuff is self-imposed. If I look at myself, I don't get scared of barriers. I just don't see them as clearly as others might see them. So I just keep forging ahead. And I think that's kind of what's missing. Women are very hard on themselves. I have women engineers, and when they come in and ask for a raise, they expect very little. Whereas the guys might do half as much, but their expectations are higher. I've never really sat there and said, okay, I'm a woman-owned, and I'm going to run into things. I just keep stepping forward.
And Georgette, let's talk to me about, since you've arrived, where do you think is sort of the low-hanging fruit? If we could just pick that off and focus on that, we would be unleashing so many more women entrepreneurs.
When the opportunity came, I thought about it because I realized there's a huge opportunity for me to play a pivotal role with this innovation economy, particularly driven by women. I can really change the landscape here because I think I've got the drive, the ambition, the connections, and so forth. And I do believe in women being the economic driver. So when you ask about what's the low-hanging fruit, so first of all, $150 billion to $180 billion was the money left on the table because we did not give women opportunities in terms of supporting their business entrepreneurship. If we had more of the women in the ecosystem supported, that would have been Canada's GDP in the last 7 to 8 years. So we need to actually amplify our ability and our partnerships in terms of the sectors that we're in. And what I'm doing right now with WBE Canada is ensuring that we're aligning with Canada's national strategy and where the world is going. That Gretzky, analogy, where the puck is going. The other thing I'm working on is I'm actually taking the scaffolding approach versus the ladder, i.e. not one or two of us going up, but how do we all work together as women-owned businesses to actually put forward things like RFPs or other opportunities. So together we're going to go and rise above faster and stronger. The other is the untold story. So you're a great storyteller, Tony. And so I don't think WBE's actually been telling the story in terms of our impact, our economic impact, the sectors that we're in. What about the ripple effect of that on economies? Right? And the legacy piece.
So Jennifer, because I know your story and you were so open to share it, and I'll just paraphrase it. You had a very tough childhood. You found your way through it. You could have gone one way, you went the other. Do you think that part of the DNA of entrepreneurs is that quite early in life, we learn how to overcome circumstances? Is your background part of the DNA of a great entrepreneur?
I grew up with a lot of instability, trauma, chaos in the household. And I always kind of go back to my humble beginnings as a almost superpower. I can tap into this resilience and strength when needed. And it gives you perspective, because if you can get through surviving what feels like life or death at the time, these business problems seem quite small to me these days. So it gives me a lot of peace and calm through the storm. And I do wonder about that part of your question about how to educate, because I'm a mother of two young little girls, a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old, and they're not having a rough time like I did. So I'm wondering, how in the world are you going to build this resilience? Hopefully, I mean, I could lead by example, but I mean, the school system would be a great idea. I think that there's a huge opportunity there. I didn't learn any of this stuff in school about politics or the world or business either. And so, yeah, I just encourage people to be grateful for humble beginnings and hard times, because they actually act as a tool later on. And then I think what was most important for me is just really moving from survival to purpose. And that was the biggest shift, because in the beginning, I was building a business and or making money just to survive. And it's not until I learned that these businesses or this platform can be used as a vehicle for service did I really start to heal and then help other people heal and clear the path for them to grow.
Shamira, how about your background? I mean, who provided you lessons in life, said you're capable of everything and anything?
I grew up in Africa. I don't know if you remember the Idi Amin crisis. My parents left Africa. We moved to London and then moved to Toronto when I was 13 or so. I never went to the same school for more than 1 year at a time. And it was very hard as immigrants, my parents, to adjust. It did build resilience. It did build this feeling of it's not the end of the world. And it's such a natural thing. I don't get stressed or panic, maybe as others might. I don't get into my head and start worrying. But I think it's because you've kind of grown up with adversity and you've learned how to deal with it. So I do think that's an important part of who I am today.
Shamira, I want to build on that, because somewhat of a lonely childhood. You're just starting to make friends. You have to go and then you get an entrepreneurship, and it's a lonely place to be as well, because your employees can't see your fear. They have to believe that you got your hand on the rudder. Is that just conditioned? Have you built this sort of armor around you that says, no matter what's happening, I'm less reliant on others and more reliant on myself to figure that out? Is that part of your DNA? Or
I kind of describe myself almost like a duck on water. I'm very calm. Underneath, I'm paddling like crazy, right? But nobody has to know that. I'm very much part of the team. Sympathetic, empathetic. Like, I really try and understand different people. So I think I found the right balance of being able to be a leader, but at the same time, I do take the time to understand. If I go back to my first business, I became friends with the employees, right? I just didn't know better. Today, there's a lot of respect both ways. There's enough relationship where there's loyalty and strength, but yet we're not friends. And, it's just something has changed over the years.
And Georgette, I mean, we've talked about, where the puck's going, exactly what you're going to do. How do you communicate that? What's your lessons for getting somebody across the table to see what you're saying? I not only understand what you're saying, I feel I'm excited and you're giving me something to act upon.
First, having that vision helps, and it's very clear. And then saying, tell me what you see. Tell me how we can work together. Tell me what I'm missing. You've been here longer than I have. What are your thoughts on this? I'm open to all ideas that I think are going to drive us, to get us there faster, but it is a conversation. But I think what has been missing for a little while with this organization is the vision and the direction that we want to go, and then how do we help everybody scale? So just to give you an example, we have over 90 corporate partners. Tell me what you need. Where are your gaps? How can we facilitate? How can we get the supplier diversity into you faster? And then that gets the buy-in, because it's people saying, okay, she's actually listening. She wants to figure out how to work together. She wants to address my pain points. Here's where we're going. Would you like to join us? Or here's my plan. How does that sound?
I talk to a lot of business people. They talk about the red tape, the bureaucracy, the spider webs that just get tangled. You might feel like you're breaking through it, but they're still all over your face and your body.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to say this is what we're going to do, but you got to go in there with a chainsaw and get rid of some of this. What can we be doing to encourage government to say, we don't need you beside us. We just need you, and sometimes to get out of our way?
So part of it, I think, is an accountability conversation. We were talking to an organization, I won't say who it is. They had all of these procurement people who are often the middle managers, right? These people are like, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You can't sit on a panel and talk about innovation and economy and being part of Canada. And then when we say, hey, we've got supplier diversity, your people are saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't want to give a women-owned business a chance. I'd rather work with the people I've worked with because it's just too much trouble. these people that are the decision makers that are holding, and they're usually middle managers. My question is, where are you going career-wise? If you want to get ahead, then you need to be redefining how you're defining innovation and procurement, because that is going to take you to the director level or senior manager level. I can give you examples of companies like the two women you've got here. You have a problem, look at the exceptional talent you've got here. I have lists of these women who are ready to go, certified. So I come in with the solution, not just the problem, and say, let's test this out, and then let's talk.
Jennifer, one of my favorite talks that you do is about Roy and how having that second in command in your organization allows you to do what you do best, knowing that you have somebody in your corner really supporting the execution of the company. Because a lot of entrepreneurs, I find in their early years, think they have to do it all. It's either economics, I can't afford somebody, or it's a perfectionist. You decided that you needed that second in command.
The first person who pointed out that I needed a second in command was a client of mine. He's like, Jen, you need a number two. Luckily, I had mentors like my Yoda, Jeff Bagg, around me saying, Jen, you've got to learn how to work on your business, not in your business so much. The way I met Roy reminds me of, when opportunities come up, be careful not to let them slip. And for her, Jeff was doing some sort of charity meeting that day because someone had asked him like, hey, can you meet this person? She's just looking for advice. He certainly, is a busy man and he didn't have to take that meeting, but he did. Called me from his office and said, hey, Jen, you've got to come down here and meet this person. And as soon as I met her, I just knew there was something special about her. And so we worked together for a year at BAG before I flew out of the nest. And the BAG group is where I incubated Staff Shop. And Ali came with me. And it was just clear right out of the gate that she was operations excellence. And I was going to be able to finally be freed up to work on the vision and the strategy and the business development. And I always encourage people, if you can, find your Walt or find your Roy, because it's really difficult to try to do things alone or to try to do everything yourself.
Shamira, you talk about your first company, you became friends with everybody. And then your second company, you talked about the importance of relationships, but relationships that work for both. Talk a little bit more about that. Businesses are almost often formed over a cup of coffee or a conversation. And they're with friends, and friends don't necessarily always make the best partners. So talk to me a little about what you've learned along the way in terms of what you need to build a business and when friends matter and when finding the right person for the right seat on the bus matters.
And sometimes it's really magical how they come into your life. I had no money, right? So when you don't have money, you're trying to get people that are going to work on commission or going to take a risk with you. But I was very lucky in the early part of this company that, I met people who really wanted to be entrepreneurs, but didn't really have the guts to really take it on themselves. I'm very passionate about the business. So what happens is they buy into your vision and then your passion kind of fuels them, right? I found a gentleman that was really strong at finance and he really wanted to be an entrepreneur, but very cautious, risk adverse, would have never made it on his own. I'm a little ADD and I think big, and having somebody to keep your feet on the ground is really important. Then a development person came in my life with software, then an IT person. So over the years, I have 5 people that each do their own thing in the company. Together, we're very interesting in that we're all very different, but through tough times, stuck it out. That's the magic.
Is there a difference between an intrapreneur and an entrepreneur? Is one of your superpowers finding people that says, I want to be part of something like that? I just don't think I have the risk appetite to do so.
My development person was a contractor and he was running his own business and I could tell he was struggling, but he had a little bit of an entrepreneurial spirit in him. Tough times will come. In 20 years, 15 years were really painful. I don't know if I want to go through them again, but extremely painful. I've got lots and lots of scars. And when those people go through that and live through that with you, it's really magical. But at the end of the day, I'm the one signing all the agreements. I'm the one taking all the risks. I'm the one giving up my salary first.
Georgette, this is more about your career in general. But I think what Shamira was just talking about is intellectual rewards, emotional rewards, being part of something special, being part of a team where we're learning and contributing together. And then there's financial rewards that at the end of the day, there's a paycheck. And what I just heard from Shamira was that she attracted people that stayed with her, even when the financial rewards might be fleeting. How important is it in terms of nurturing that people have a real sense of purpose and belonging that ladder much higher than the profit, the bottom line, and the metrics?
I've been through various organizations that I've worked with where, exactly what she talked about. And I think the reason people align with the CEO is because they believe in the vision and the excitement and the ultimate purpose. And so part of doing that is making sure everyone is seen and heard and respected, and they see that they're in a critical part of everything that we're doing. You could lead all you want, but you can't get there without the team. That acknowledgement and then being able to invest in the team as well. It's not always money. Giving people an opportunity to step a little bit, get a light shine on them. All of that builds, I think, the trust and the alignment in an organization. And I think it's also, it helps organizations level up. You could pay people a ton of money, but if they're just doing it for a paycheck, you're not going to get to where you want to go. You're not. They're going to plug in and plug out. It's that other, the other women are nodding because you've seen it. We've been there. We've done it. I've been that person. Like, it's not about the money. It's about what can I do? What kind of legacy do I want to leave behind? I want to go home every night, put my head on that pillow and be proud of the day that I did and know I'm moving the dial forward and know that my kids are going, she's awesome. I want to be like my mom. That's what I want.
And Jennifer, let's build on that, because there's a lot of people that want to use a lot of their initials in terms of how important they are. I love the way you introduce yourself by adding things like wife, mother, your faith, your First Nations, your French Canadian. I mean, you talk about this mosaic called Jennifer. How do you find a way to balance all of that so that you as an individual are growing, your business is growing, your new entrepreneurial venture is growing, you're growing in your relationship with your partner, you're growing with your relationship as a mother, you're growing your faith. How do you manage to do all of that? Because I'm exhausted just asking you the question.
Well, not all at the same time. First off, it's easy to look at me now and say, oh, how do you have all these things? But it happened in layers. It certainly took a village. It still takes a village. I used to say in my 20s, I will never get married and never have kids because I couldn't possibly see how that would be an option. I also came from a broken family. So I thought, everyone that would get married would get divorced. And so I was, just focused on my career. And in some interesting way, although I began in survival workaholic mode, when I reconnected with my faith in my early 30s and did a lot of therapy and healed through mentors and teachers and people in business, I finally had the space and capacity and I think maturity and the experience. I had built things already to a certain point where I was able to then say, okay, now that I found Roy, she's a key reason as to why I was able to have the kids and still keep the businesses going. My husband came into my life at the same time she did, the same month, November 2017, which is wild. And then, just the concept of serving outward and upward and not yourself, something just shifted and things just fell into place. I started doing a lot of philanthropy work with Victim Services Toronto because majority of people being trafficked across Canada are Indigenous women and girls. And that's kind of tied to my personal story to some degree. I've always wanted to help women and children. And I just started looking at things differently and being really grateful for the much bigger platform that I have now to help women and children. My mission really is just starts with breaking generational curses within my own family. And I feel like a deep responsibility to do that and to help other people do the same. And I just, think of my grandmother who used to tell my mother and her sister, like, no matter what you do, you'll always be an Indian. I'm sure she's smiling down from heaven now, just like not even believing that I'm in this position, able to talk about this kind of stuff.
When we return, I ask my 3 high-powered guests what they would do if they were Prime Minister of Canada.
Hi, it's Tony Chapman, host of the podcast Chatter That Matters, and I'm here to give a big shout out to a long-standing partner of RBC, Women of Influence Plus. This is an organization that isn't here to change the narrative, it is here to rewrite it, to create a more inclusive tomorrow. And one of their biggest initiatives is the RBC Canadian Women Entrepreneur Awards. For over 3 decades, they've recognized and celebrated the strides of Canada's most accomplished, influential, and impactful women. It is the leading women's awards program in the nation, working to elevate their important contributions from economic growth to social change across sectors, across industries, and across Canada. Women of Influence Plus and the RBC Canadian Women Entrepreneur Awards, well, that matters to you, to me, and to RBC.
Today, my special guests are Jennifer Menard-Shand, Shamira Jaffer, and Georgette Zinaty, three women who are proving one of my favorite quotes, that your destiny is a matter of choice, not chance. And Shamira, as we sort of go to the final part of the interview, which is really bringing it back to this concept of unleashing opportunity. One thing I was very impressed with is your ability to scale your business outside of our borders. It seems that Canada very often has this inferiority complex. We don't feel that we have the right to compete. Very often, if we have something that's a better mousetrap, we end up taking it to the States, finding our capital there, even our creative talent. What gave you the courage to go after new markets, and what advice can you give to others?
I found it much easier to sell elsewhere than to sell in Canada. Imagine I've been in business for 20 years. Probably 96% of our business is outside of Canada. So it's never that they look for a Canadian company first. This thing that's going on right now with Canada First is really fantastic. So needed. To sell in Canada, Canadians are far more cautious. I'm selling a very innovative product that doesn't exist. So to sell in Canada, I think you have to work way, way, way harder to convince. They're not going to take the risk. The advantage of selling in Canada is when they do buy, you get loyalty and you get great people you're working with for years and years to come. Americans are much more likely when it comes to innovation to jump in. But I don't think I ever saw the borders. And I'm really grateful right now to be getting Canadian business.
I'm hearing a lot about psychology here, that the Canadians is not just our inferiority complex, can we sell abroad, but it's this sense of Canada, if I'm procuring, I don't believe that there's a better mousetrap in Canada. My default's going to be looking elsewhere. How do we change the psychology of a nation? Because to me, when you feel like a winner and you act like a winner, there's a good chance you'll become a winner.
She touched on it, which is the confidence of how we show up. So when I think about women entrepreneurs, I think a lot of them are coming in without the sort of that sense of confidence. It's like, would you take a risk? She's very clear on what she does, right? And she said she's got the scars to prove it. But there are many women entrepreneurs who maybe are not there that. So I think part of that is being able to go in. How are you showing up for that meeting that you're having with somebody? So if somebody says, that's great, but I'm not interested, this is not the right fit. What happens is most of us go, okay, thank you, and they pack up. Well, what would make it a right fit? What is your biggest pain point? Because if this is not the solution, let me frame to you how I think the solution could work. We often don't do that. We kind of minimize, and Shamira's right, like you're nodding your head because that's how it works. And then leveling up our community. So for example, if we can get into one or two, she gets into Canadian Tire, other organizations in Canada are going to go, oh, you're in Canadian Tire, that in itself will open up other doors. Push hard enough to get through one so we can continue to open the other and use those as examples. I talk to people about what is your innovation strategy? Okay, how are you implementing that? When I'm talking to a corporate, when I'm talking to a partner, it's not just the confidence, it's also with the data. It's also here, let me give you what a plan could look like. But I'm also in my head ready for every pain point that they're going to talk to me about so that I can address it to actually move the dial forward. Look, you can go great Canadian. You don't need to go outside. And then there's a huge impact that you're making here. And then this is the ripple effect of all of that. So it's not just a good thing to do, it's a good business strategy.
Jennifer, there's been a lot of systemic issues in our economy that have created unfair and unnatural barriers for minorities, for women-owned businesses. We're going to change the game. We're going to move the chess pieces in a very different way. How do we make sure that when women succeed because of that, they feel that they've succeeded because they deserve to be there, versus they were given the same unfair advantages that potentially men were given for decades?
It might help you open the door a bit, but you still have to work really hard to get that opportunity, that contract signed, and then to stay in there. It kind of holds you accountable to making sure that you're meeting the right criteria and you're not just getting opportunities because you're a woman-owned business or Indigenous women-owned business. At the same time, as a society or just human beings, I think we have some responsibility to take a look at our history or the bad parts of our history and do our best not to repeat it. As a First Nations Ojibwe, I mean, I know a lot about what happened to our Indigenous people. And so some of the barriers that still exist in our country are beyond unfair. I mean, just to list a few, the poverty is still the biggest issue. 73% of communities are still without clean water, and child welfare is a big problem. And so when you're dealing with issues like that, I think that we need to rally together on the corporate side and with government to remove some of those barriers that are really getting in the way of people getting educated or getting employed. But at the same time, even my Indigenous people that I connect with, they want to compete based on merit. They want to keep their dignity intact. And people are usually looking for a hand up, not a handout.
My final question is, I have supreme power here that I can make all three of you the Prime Minister of Canada. Really think the world could use a lot more women leadership. I'm not sure we'd be at a war right now, but you're running Canada. Tell me what you would do to unleash the opportunities that we talked about, to invite women who have that itch, that desire to come in and become entrepreneurs and have the same smiles on their faces and the eyes shining the way yours are. What would you do to make that happen? I'll start with you, Shamira.
A lot of these programs for women or for diversity, that it's not really a handout. You feel like, okay, well, people might think that there's favoritism, but really all you're really getting is a seat at the table and an opportunity to present. You still have to do a lot of work, and it's still an uphill battle. So I think those kind of programs is really critical. In a funny way, I at one point when we were speaking, I said, didn't think of myself as all women owned, but it's true that I'm not the person that's going out to the ball games and at the bar and playing golf. And so you miss out on business opportunities because you're a woman, right? If you have kids and you have all of this other stuff, how do we support women so that they have the time to go put their 100% into building a business? I do feel that there's Canadian pride. I think we have to continue to be really, really strong on women and diversity. That's what makes Canada so special. We have to be more daring. We have to not be as cautious and to be much more aggressive. That's what makes Americans so great to work with in business.
And Jennifer, what would you do?
Definitely fix access to opportunity. So just like real access to capital, procurement, things like childcare, making it just a lot easier for women that are working, because I'm careful to say this, but I can kind of see why, in a sense, women stayed home back in the day, so to speak, because it is such a big job to raise kids and then also be working in order to survive in this country. And so just like really fixing the access to that opportunity and supporting our women in the workplace would be number one. And then I think making supplier diversity a national growth strategy, doing a lot of the things that Georgette was talking about earlier, like actually getting it done and having deadlines and progress that we could actually review and track. And then just, probably redesigning some of the systems that are broken so that merit can actually work. Like women shouldn't have to outperform broken systems just to get a fair shot.
And Georgette, what do you think? I know that you've got your eyes on becoming Prime Minister one day. I can just sense that.
Is the world ready for curly-haired energy? I don't know. So a lot of money gets wasted every time a government changes. And I think there's some fundamental programs that if we talk about having federal procurement, 15%, for example, for women, when we set that target, it doesn't matter who's in government. Those things should be stable, in my opinion, because they're good investment economic strategies. But not just that. I want you to imagine if we made some of those departments like have mandatory public reporting, and then tying that into the actual growth strategy of the country. Maybe putting together a blended fund, like a capital fund where women can access funds easier so they can grow and scale. If I think about the billions of dollars that you often talk about, when you're posting on LinkedIn and other platforms where money is wasted, imagine putting like $2 to $3 billion internally to invest in building women up. Imagine the impact of that, right? So having a national strategy, having some key targets, having ministers actually report on terms of not just the nice photo ops that we all like to see them do and they like to do, but then what is the actual outcome? Is there an annual report that says, here's what I actually achieved? And then map that out over 5-10 years so that we can see strategic growth. I think that will be a game changer.
I always end with my 3 takeaways, and there's about 27 that happened over the last 45 minutes, but the ones that really stood out, Jennifer, I love when you said, we're not looking for a handout, we're looking for a hand up. That should be the mentality of Canada in general. Mm-hmm. Set up the conditions for success, put the rungs out in the ladder, but get out of the way because I'm going to grab those rungs and I'm going to keep climbing. And then also that honesty about if we want more women in the workforce, we also have to have empathy and an understanding of what it means to raise a family and try to build a business. Those are the conditions that are necessary to unleash that and to create the kind of magic that I'm listening to today. To put 1,000 of new yous into the marketplace next year, the amplification and the energy would be just contagious. Shamira, I think one of the chords that really came through to you is, do we have this appetite for risk in this country? Do we really, truly want it? I would argue that as a country, we've taken really good care of people. Yet it's the immigrants that have come into this country that weren't guaranteed 3 meals a day, weren't guaranteed healthcare, weren't even guaranteed an opportunity to go to school, that are fighting their way through and saying, just let me go. I've gone through the school of hard knocks. Just arriving in this country, leaving a culture, a language, my friends and family to come here already proves that I have the capabilities to go from ordinary to extraordinary if the conditions are right. And I think it really comes down to that psychology. And Georgette, I think what you excel at is your ability to come to a meeting prepared, not to get them to buy into your condition, but to have them realize that it's something we can share together. And I always say that's the art of it. Instead of telling your story, you become part of theirs. And I think it really comes down to that quote you gave of Gretzky, skate to where the puck is. And I think as a country, if we can just close our eyes and imagine that we are doubling the amount of women entrepreneurs in this country. And we're doing so by giving them the conditions to succeed. Giving them, as you said, Shamira, a seat at the table. Look out, because this Canadian economy will be turbocharged. And I hope all 3 of you, with the mentorship you do and the positions and platforms you have, it just leads to 3 more than mine, 9 more than 27 more, and then that exponential curve. And in doing so, Canada can start earning its way forward versus where I think we've been for too long, which is sort of boring our way forward. So I really appreciate you joining me on Chatter That Matters.
When I just say, if you don't have a seat at the table, bring your own damn chair and sit down.
Once again, a special thanks to RBC for supporting Chatter That Matters. It's Tony Chapman. Thanks for listening, and let's chat soon.